Hi everyone, in this video we're going to be making textures to finish off our monsters. Now I know I told you guys you had to be at the point where you had eyes, ears, nose, and a mouth, and then from here we're going to add on other features and details and texture as well. So just looking at this to define some of the features a little bit more, one thing I might want to do is add like a coil at the base of my beak to give it a little bit more of a separation from the skin, because usually there is kind of this barrier that goes from beak to skin. It's not just a smooth transition from one to the other. So if I grab my scoring tool, I think it's right here. One thing I'm going to do, turn this on the side, is score around the base here where I'm going to put my coil, and then I score my coil, and then I'm going to add some water. Let's use a brush. I like to use a brush when I add water. It makes it a lot easier. There we go. And then I put my coil on. Make sure you can see that okay. Put my coil on where I want it, and then I want to blend it to the beak. So you can either blend it to the beak or you can blend it to the base. So there's two ways to do this. You can either blend it to the beak and leave that coiled edge right here. I don't blend it to the actual skin part, I just kind of leave it as an edge, and it kind of creates that barrier like they're two separate pieces. And especially when I go to put texture on, the beak can be very smooth, and then this can be a little bit more textured out. Okay, so you can do it that way, or you can do it the opposite. So if I take this off for a second, hold on. You can blend it to the base and leave the edge where the beak is. So that way you're kind of showing where the skin ends and the beak begins. So same thing, you're going to score and slip, and then just blend it the opposite direction so that we have the edge a little bit more defined, so that this part is actually skin, not beak, or whatever you texture it as. Let's see, smooth that out. And then that would be my separation, and that's something, it just creates kind of a finished look to give it more of a definition rather than everything's just blended together. Cheekbones, I did add bones under the eyes for structure. That's something else you can do. You can make them a little bit wider or thicker too. I can score and slip clay here. So if I want to build this up a little bit more, I can score that area and score the coil, and then add water, sorry. And I can add clay to this to kind of build it up so that it's a little more defined structure. Because I want to give it more of a three-dimensional quality rather than just a flat surface. There we go. So that could be something I'm adding just for structural purposes to give it a little bit more interesting of height quality. Okay. And then I would do the same thing on the other side as well. On the beak part here too, I forgot, I would do this on the top as well to kind of define where the beak ends on the side, top side too, and the skin begins. So I'd bring it right up to the nose area. Where'd that brush go? Sorry, I had to backtrack for a second there. There we go. That makes it a little more understandable. So if you have areas that are hard to get into and hard to smooth, sometimes I use the back of a brush Smooth that out. And then sometimes I use the front of the brush with the bristles, and I go in those grooves and smooth out within the groove. Okay, see, that kind of frames the face a little bit more. Okay, so I'll put one on the other side as well. Just to finish it off. Score both sides, add some water, and blend it on. Well, you don't have to do this. I mean, it's all about what you want to build up and the look you're going for. I'm just giving you like another possible something you can add to your face to give it a little more of a finished look or definition. There we go. You can also make wrinkles. So if you're doing wrinkles, that's another thing you can do. I can use this maybe as my catalyst for wrinkles. So I use one of the hook tools, and I can make wrinkles by just pressing in. And remember, when you're doing something like wrinkles or cracks the skin or anything along those lines, always carve and sculpt to the shape of the head. So you're not making everything straight lines, because the face isn't straight. It's full of curves and ins and outs and so forth. So if I carve a lot of these lines in, and now I can work with like adding some clay as well for wrinkles. It gets all kind of straggly. You can see all the straggly lines. You take your clean or your wet brush, and just kind of go over those to give it a little bit smoother of a wrinkle, so it doesn't look like it's something beyond skin, unless you're going for something like a different look than skin. But you can kind of smooth them off and then kind of redefine a little bit once it's all cleaned off. Some really cool wrinkle texture on your creature. So that's one texture. You can do wrinkles and really kind of emphasize them. The worst thing you could do if you're doing wrinkles is make them too fine and hard to notice. So go back in, add a little more, smooth it out, and so forth, and have fun with it. So wrinkles, that's one way to do wrinkles. Adding clay and then carving clay. So if you're going for a texture that's kind of beyond, I mean, basically there's three ways to make texture. You either press it into the clay, you carve it into the clay, or you add it onto the clay. So in here, the first thing I want to do is take all my tools and see what kind of textures I can make with my tools. Just by pressing certain things in to see what I come up with. You can use shells. You can use rocks, all right, and just kind of play around with a slab of clay and see what kind of interesting textures you can come up with by just pushing some of your tools into the clay. This one looks kind of like a scale. And you just gotta stagger them, overlap them. This one makes a nice scale texture too. It's a little more rounded. I guess it's scales, or I don't know what you want to call them. But that's an interesting texture. And this is just pressing into the clay. What else can we use? See what kind of patterns you can make. Carving, so you can carve in almost any texture. You can scoop some stuff out, cut into your clay. Obviously you don't want to go too deep, you don't want to cut through. And this is just scooping with the side of my tool. You can use the scoring tool, and just by making circles, you can scratch up the surface. Make it look kind of like hairy almost, or you could make hair, wavy hair, just by carving into. It's a bit simple, but you can do it. Adding clay on. So if you're going to add clay, there's a couple things you can do to add clay. I mean, depending on the texture you want, you can make kind of like a barnacle texture. Take a ball of clay, score to slip it into place, and then if you take like the back of a brush, you know, and just kind of play with it a little bit, make like those hollow coral pieces. Do a bunch of them together. Something like that. You can make spikes. Clearly, you can make a spike. You just got to roll a cone-like shape. Okay, and then score and slip it on, and then blend it on. So you're gonna figure out how you're gonna score these on. Again, just roll out a cone. Give it a flat spot on the bottom. Put it on and blend. And there's your spikes. You could do, I don't know, circles. Score and slip these into place. All different sizes, or you can do them all one size. And fill in a whole area of scored and slipped in dots. They have to be scored and slipped though. If you don't score and slip this texture, it'll fall right off when it dries. And then you'll get a 0. So don't do that. For texture at least, you'll get a 0 for texture. If your texture falls off. What else could we do? Oh, garlic presses. I have a couple garlic presses here in the classroom. But if you have stuff at home that you can make textures with, or three-dimensional textures, you're more than welcome to use whatever you have at home. You could use the bottom of your shoe, always make some interesting textures. You can use, like I said before, shells or rocks or flowers, anything that could make an interesting kind of surface quality. Sorry, I had to clean that up before I used it. But if you use like a garlic press, you can put some clay into it. It's kind of just like when we used to have Play-Doh as a kid, and you just squeeze and then you get the hair. The thing with this is I would keep it as a set here and score and slip it as a whole into one area. Okay, so that it kind of all comes out of one spot. Okay, that's a texture as well. So there's a lot of different things that you can do, and I need 3 noticeable, strong textures. Do not leave any area blank. So I'm gonna texture my wrinkles on the side. Maybe I'll do some barnacles at the bottom and some scaliness or furriness up above the eyes. Maybe I can hair out the ears a little bit too. Don't leave this thing bare and blank. I'm telling you, it's gonna be boring and look unfinished. When you put all your texture and detail on, that's when this project really comes to life and you get this finished look of a project, and it looks like you put hours into it, which you probably have, but it's still, it's more noticeable, okay? Rather than someone just would walk by it, they would actually kind of stop to look at the interesting textures that you created. So texture is definitely key. So press, carve, or attach for texture. Okay, added features, maybe more of a chin structure or cheek structure or brow structure. Those are things you can add on also, like give it like a little bit more definition. And then you should have a finished product. And you can always ask me for help or request a meeting for extra help. So if you're lost and don't know what kind of textures to do, just play around with the slab until you find something that you like, and then you can use that to come up with what to put on your monster. Okay? If you have any questions, email me and I'll be sure to answer.